Hello and welcome to our tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to build on what we started with, what we finished up with last time. So we're going to have, if I just save this scene here and launch this one. Okay, so last time we had our background, we had our main player. When I press play, we can move. Now in this version of the game, if I just zoom out here, we're still playing. The camera and the character are still, and the background is moving. I'm not going to work on this just yet. I'm going to look at level 1. Now in this one, the background is static and the camera moves with the player. So here we go, so you can see the camera and the player moving. Now what we're going to look at in this tutorial, and we'll see kind of soon. Oh, there we go. We're getting hit by something. So let's go and have a look at what's going on. Okay. So this is my non-player character, and I call them NPC1. And we'll press play and we'll zoom out a bit. So there's my non-player character, there's my character. This white box is what the camera can see. So I'm going to move my character forward, and at a certain point my non-player character sees me, then stops at a certain distance and then fires. And the bullets have physics. You can see they delete themselves after a period of time. I can try and push back, and then I have an escape velocity. My escape velocity didn't work terribly well there. Let's see if I can get my escape velocity to work this time. I can get away. So there we go. So he's gone back to playing his idle cycle. I'm playing my idle cycle. I get close enough, he starts to walk, and let's see if I can get away. Yeah, I'm away. Before I finish, I fall off the edge. And there he is having his idle cycle again. Okay, so what we're going to look at today, or we're going to look at in this session, is this character here, the non-player character. And we're going to try and, in this other level here, we're going to try and set up this non-player character. If we, first of all, let's drag in his sprite and then position it. So we'll position him down here. Now there's a sprite. We're going to have to add in a 2D box collider. We're going to have to add in a 2D rigid body. We're going to have to constrain the rotation. You should always set it to interpolate and to continuous. So this checks for collision detection every frame, and is more accurate. If you've got a bullet or something that's going to be shot, it should always have continuous detection on it. Interpolate is it just makes for smoother animation. And do not turn on is kinematic. That'll make a ghost. It'll fall through the floor. So there's my rigid body, and then I've got a script here that we're going to look at. So this is my non-player character AI script. It has a whole bunch of variables in it. So let's go have a look at that script, because this is at the heart of what we're going to do today. Before I do that, I'll have a quick look at I'm going to fire a bullet over here. I'm going to have a bullet. So where's my bullet gone? There it is there. Now, as you can see, it's got a trail renderer on it. So if I press play here, there's my bullet, and it's disappeared. Fantastic. So we'll drag it in and we can move it about. So a trail renderer is just that. So this is a trail renderer. It's just a component. If I I won't delete it, I'll show you where it is. It's in effects, and it's a trail renderer. And a trail renderer is very nice. It'll literally give a tail to something. So if you wanted to give the impression of kind of motion blur, you can pick the color of the trail that comes off it and the size of the trail. So as it moves through the world, how, you can say the time that it will last, this trail, and the colors that are in it. So if I take away this red and make it a bit more conventional, make it a bit more blue, you can see that the red here at the front is gone. I've got a little tinge of red at the tail. I can get rid of that and maybe make it green. So it's a little simpler. Cool. So anyways, that's our bullet. When you change the setting in a prefab, in order to get it to stay, so what I did was I brought it out here, I changed it here as a bullet, so this one's slightly different colors. I need to hit apply here. So if I make a change, so if I drag the prefab in here and make changes to it, if I want those changes to apply to the prefab, I need to hit apply. Let's just get rid of these bullets. We don't need them for now, they're just an aside. But we do need a bullet. So how is that made, that bullet? Let's just very quickly run through that before we get to the main script. So I made a very simple sprite called bullet. So a sprite renderer. I added a physics 2D circle collider to it. I added the effects trail renderer, and then I added a small script called bullet die, which basically says when the bullet starts, so when it's added to the game, yield wait for seconds 2, so wait for 2 seconds and then destroy the bullet. So the bullet only ever exists in the game for 2 seconds. And why did I do that? Well, if I'm going to fire thousands of these bullets, I don't want all of them in the game hanging around. Basically, like if the character passes by those bullets, if they're still in the game, Unity's going to have to work out all of their collision, their position, their rotation, all of those things every frame. So for every rigid body there, it's taking up a lot of processing. So what we're doing is we're going, after 2 seconds, delete yourself, and then the game engine or the hardware, if you're on a phone or something, doesn't have to worry about processing that information. It's just a more efficient way of playing. So here's my non-player character, and here's my script: rigid body and a box collider. So let's just jump into this script and have a look at it. So non-player character AI. So it looks complicated, and some of it is. It's not a huge script. It's 13 to 40 lines, and a lot of them are variables. So the first thing is, in the game we have set it up so that, or we will be setting it up, sorry, if we look at the other scene. So I was going to say go file save here and go back to the other scene. So what we have here is a range. Okay, so as I play the game here, there's a range, there's a distance at which this character will respond at, and I've just breached there, and it's actually 15 units, so 15 whatever you would like to call them. Okay, so 15 units. So in order to calculate that distance, it's the distance between the enemy and the player. So how do you calculate distance in Unity? Well, this line here takes care of it. So we've got a variable called range, and we've declared it as a vector2. So something with an x and y coordinate. It's not just a position. If it was a position, we wouldn't use this. So we've declared it as a distance. So it's basically the distance between 2 points, 2 x's and 2 y's. And how do we generate them? Well, we get the X and Y position of this object and the X and Y position of this object. We use transform because they're changing. So the changing position of this and the changing position of that give me a distance. So there'll be a distance between those 2 points in space. And we are saying then, and that distance is range. So the distance between the 2 players is the range. So as my player moves away from the enemy, that number will get bigger, and as they move closer together, the number will get smaller. So then we just say, if the range is smaller than 15, but bigger than 5, and that's how you add a second if. So if this and this are both true, that's what this statement here says. It says, if the range is bigger than 15, or sorry, smaller than 15 and bigger than 5, then do this stuff. Now what is this stuff? Well, this stuff is turn around the sprite so it's facing pointing towards the left. That mightn't always work for us, so we may, if we're going to have a game where we can attack the sprite from both sides, we may have to make this a little bit more complicated, but for now that's fine. So it turns the right way, and this one's move. So move, and it says move towards. So it's, again, we're using this here. So we're moving towards our player, and we're moving towards the player at a particular speed, and that speed is a variable that we have declared up here. So their speed, so range is a float, speed is a float, enemy, which is me, which is the non-player character, and then the player. Although, to be honest, it doesn't matter if you get them the wrong way around, it's just one object and another object. Yeah, and then we've got our range as a variable and our speed. So basically move it at a particular speed. So if I'm in range, start moving. And then this here, set integer states to 2, and we did this 2 weeks ago. So what does that mean? Well, if we go into our, if I double click here, this is, if I go to my player, this is the state machine we made for the player. Oh, no, not my finger. And then this is the state machine for the non-player character. It's the same number of animations, and you can see it's a bit of a spaghetti junction. Well, that's because there's a good few animations. They're quite simple though. Basically, if I've got a state of 0, so all of the transitions that are coming into idle, say if the state equals 0. So if I'm firing and I want to transition to idle, state of 0. If I'm walking and I get a state of 0, I'll transition to idle. If I'm jumping and then I have a state, or state equals 0, I'll go to idle. Fire has got a value of 1, so anytime the state equals 1, I'll fire. Anytime the state equals 2, I'll walk. And anytime the state equals 3, I'll jump. And then finally, anytime the state equals 4, I'll explode. I'll play that animation. Now I'm not going to go through how I made that because we did it previously in class, and there's a previous video on how to set up the state machine. And that's time consuming, so that's going to take you 20 minutes or so to do. I've turned off exit time on all of them so that we don't have to wait for the one animation to finish playing before the next one kicks in. So on all of these you'll notice that the has exit time has been turned off. So this has to be set up in order for this piece of code to work. So you have to have set up, made the animations, and again that requires you to get the sprite, open up the animation window, select it here, and then play the animations here. If I go back to the scene window, you'll see him walking, idle, fire, explode, etc. Jump. So So that all has to be set up first, which takes time. So next, let's have a look at the rest of this script. So basically this says, so if, within a certain range, do this, okay? And this is basically the walk. So basically, if the character comes within range, within 15 units, then play the walk animation and move. And the variable over here is speed, so we can set, and we can make sure that we're not slipping or sliding with the animation. We can speed up or slow down the movement. Now, if the range is below 5, I want the character, I don't want the two ships or the two players to collide. I want them to stop and start firing. Now, I don't have to tell him to stop, because basically he'll only move if this is true. And for this to be true, the range has to be above 5. So this is when he goes below 5. So just as I get to 5 and fall below, I'll stop moving and I'll start playing the fire animation, and then I'll run this function. So let's have a look at that function. And this is some funky stuff in this, and very helpful stuff. So the first thing I've put in is a variable. That's a vector2. And what does that do? Well, when my sprite fires, I don't want it to fire from the middle of itself, because it's got collision, and if I put a bullet spawning from the middle of itself, then it'll collide with itself. So I want the bullet to fire from just in front. So if I play here, you'll see that the bullet doesn't emerge from the middle of the sprite. It emerges from just in front of the sprite. In fact, it's 2 out in front and 1 up. And those numbers are derived here. So it's -2. So -2 is to the left, and 1 up. So positively on Y. And I could change this. I could make these variables and declare them above, so that I had control over that point in space. But I've simply just added them in here as numbers. So this basically makes the firing function, when the bullet is spawned, it doesn't spawn in the middle of the sprite, it's going to spawn offset. Now we could add in an empty and have it spawn from the empty, but this is probably easier and tidier. We've one less object to worry about. Now, if time is bigger than these two numbers, then fire. And these two lines of code here are basically fire. So it's there's a variable, and the variable is called BIFE bullet, and it's a rigid body, so that means it has physics. So there's a variable, BIFE bullet, it's a rigid body. How do I make this? Well, add bullet, and we've declared that up here as a the bullet is a rigid body, so it's going to be the sprite. Transform dot position dot and offset. So add this bullet at this sprite at what position? So at the position that I'm at, which is the non-player character, plus this offset. And then what rotation should it have? Well, we've deliberately made our bullet a sphere, so its rotation is irrelevant for now. And then this is adding force to the bullet, and you see I put a minus here because that will determine the direction that it travels in. I could have made this positive and done vector2 dot left. And then this is interesting. Last shot equals time dot time. So basically this and this together are our rate of fire controller. So I'm saying last shot equals time. So let's say we're 10 seconds into the game, and I have a fire rate of 2, which translates into 2 seconds. If last shot equals time and I'm 10 seconds into the game, then I cannot fire until 10 seconds plus 2 has passed. So until I've reached 12 seconds. When I've reached 12 seconds, I can then fire, because time, let's say time moves to 13 seconds. 13 is bigger than 12, so we fire, but then last shot becomes the number 13. So then 13 plus 2 is 15. So we can't fire again until time equals 15. Then we fire, and then now last shot equals 15. 15 plus 2 is 17. We can't fire again until time 17 seconds has passed. So this is a really simple kind of time loop. So you're adding time to itself and augmenting it or changing it with the rate of fire. And of course that's a variable, a public variable, so we can in Unity change the rate of fire. So at the moment it fires every half a second. So let's just have a look at that and see if we can get this to change. So he's going to fire when he gets below 5 units, and then let's increase this. Yeah. So now he's not going to fire until 7 seconds have passed. So another 7 seconds have to pass before he'll fire again, and then we'll give it a ridiculous one. We'll say 0.1, and you can see that there are a number of bullets. They still all delete themselves after the script that stipulates die after 2 seconds. Okay, so that's all we're going to really cover for today, but there's an awful lot in that. So let's just very quickly nip to the other scene and try and set up this script. So it's saying define the enemy, so that's the non-player character. And define the target, that is the player. The range, so what is the initial range at which the character will walk towards me? So let's say 10 units. Speed, what speed should the non-player character move at? So let's say 0.5. Okay, and again, if 0.5 is kind of an arbitrary number, if it moves too quickly we can just make it smaller. If it moves too slowly we can make it a bigger number. Animator, so what animator is this using? So we haven't had this before where well, let's see here. I've made 2 folders and I've put all of the this is non-player character 1. That's the animator I want to use. And I should be able to select that in here. It's not letting me, so I'll have a look at that in a second. Let's just set up the bullet. So the bullet is a rigid body, so that goes in there. So non-player character 1. So we don't want that. We don't want that animator. That's this animator here from the main character. We want to be able to use this guy, and I do not know why I'm not able to see that. Oh, yeah, it's arrived now. So there we go. So so the animator no, I've done that incorrectly. So the bullet is there we go there. I was going to set this to none rather than have the incorrect one there, so I'll figure that out in a second. But anyway, these are the settings that we need to use. So the animator, the animator is very important. If we don't define that, then we can't set these instructions here, and therefore we can't use the mechanism system that we've set up. So we won't be able to define what animation should play at what time. Just to show you it's set up correctly, when I go back here to my original scene, my non-player character, you can see that his animator is non-player character 1, and when I click here I can select between the 2 of them. And if you have multiple, like your boss characters, etc., you're going to have multiple animation controllers. Okay, so this is a sort of an overview of this non-player character script working. So we're going to do this in class, and I'm going to be asking you to bring home this script and get it to work on your own character in your own game. Thank you.